Oh, please. No. Thank you. Now, go on, sit on down. I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I do hope you enjoyed our broad comedy. It's fantastic.
It's just a perfect late night film, you
It
know?
is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
I'm happy y'all are still awake and up. I'm with it. Thank you.
I first saw the film at Sundance almost a year ago. And I'm curious what your journey with the film has been, when you got involved, and what kind of drew you to the project to begin with.
So I came into the process a little late. Chinoya had been on it for about 4 years prior to us beginning filming. She had done the research. She had volunteered on 14 different cases. Alfred jumped in 2 years before we started filming. And the script came to me maybe like a couple months or so before we started filming. Chinoya, she sent me the script, and she sent me a beautifully written letter expressing her support of me as this character in the project. And, so I read the script. I was taken back by sort of how well she defined all these characters. I felt like no space was wasted. I felt like no scene was gratuitous. I felt like everybody played their role to the bigger goal. And one of those particular scenes was the conversation between my character and Yvette, which was Danielle Brooks. I was like, ooh, I'm gonna need to hear some claps for Dan. Yeah. I was like, ooh, she gets raw. She gets rough. Because Danielle's character had that conversation where she had the courage to say what I don't feel most of us in real life would actually have the courage to say. We may want to say these things and bear our truth, but I'm not sure. And her character had to be so strong and vigilant in that moment to just say, no, I made the better choice. And it was a rough moment for Anthony. But I came to it a little late. But, for me, it was just brilliantly written, a beautiful execution of an exploration into this particular subject matter. And you got Chinoya and you got Alfred. So I'm like, I get a chance to get on the screen with Miss Alfred, Queen Alfred. I'm with it. Yeah, you ain't got to. I got 2 lines. I'm with it. 1.5. We gonna cut it back to 2 words. That's cool. Is Alfred still gonna be there? Cool. We good.
Yeah, I mean that's quite something. I mean she's such a legend, and you're dealing. Not only is the creative team so exciting, but it's such a potent and relevant and urgent political topic. Knowing that your director had, kind of lived this in her research for years, what kind of research did you do? I mean, did you just kind of feel like it was all on the page for you?
So Chinoya and I, we spoke at length several times before we even got to set. She told me about her research and the inspiration of the real life experience with Troy Davis, who was executed here in the state of Georgia. So she gave me a book on that. I read it. We went back and forth on the idea and ideals of the death row sentence, and then they sent me to San Quentin with our producer Bronwyn Cornelius, where I got to observe, met with, and was given a tour by some of the brothers there who were carrying some life sentences. Brothers were like 19, 20 years old, in there for 25 to life. There was a brother who was about 80. He had been in there since he was 18. I know. It really was such a harrowing education into the theory of what we believe freedom to be. But even more isolating than that was the fact that at least they could go and go around the yard, play basketball if they wanted to, all that. The brothers who were on death row were in complete isolation. They were not allowed any of that. Even when they were transferred across the yard, all of the other inmates were made to turn their backs, not look at them, not speak. So there was such a lack of humane communication all the way down to what could be their last breath. And I used all of that, the observation of their reality, to inform Anthony's idea of hope, because he was so isolated. His only friend at this point is Marty, played expertly by Richard Schiff. Every time hope kept getting stripped away, he had to figure out how to fabricate it for himself. He had to be his own idea of hope. And when you see how these brothers are treated on the yard, you feel like, wow, that is what their reality is. You know, it's what it becomes after a few years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious, maybe this is a silly question, but like, did you leave the film after you were done shooting feeling different than you'd walked in with it? Did your mind change about anything? Or were you kind of playing a truth you felt you already knew?
I will say this, absolutely, it did change. It changed, it solidified what I may have been a little unsure about. So in my life, I am staunchly against the death penalty. Where I left myself open to being human was to say, if I was in a situation where one of my family members or my friends was a victim, and the decision came to me, what would I do? And my answer was, I honestly don't know. I am human, I'm flawed, I'm fallible. I'm not sure where my passion would take me if somebody was like, look, Al, this is the decision, so death penalty or this, which way are you gonna go? The hard answer was I didn't know. I didn't know that about myself, and I wanted to know. After doing this film and doing that research, it completely solidified for me that my answer would always be no. Because even when I was a child, I said at like 13, 14, I made a rule for myself, which was don't become that which you despise the most. Meaning don't become the monster that ails you. Don't allow a situation eat you up and allow that vengeance to make you that thing. And we as a society have to ask ourselves, how are we complicit in this particular case, in real life? What do we do? Do we sit back? Are we actually contributing? How do we truly feel about this, and are we doing something to eradicate the disease we know to be the death row sentence? And for me, a part of that is absolutely no. Regardless of somebody else taking life, we don't have the right to take their lives. That's not our role.
The film has been on the festival circuit for, like I said, a better part of a year now, and it's been screening kind of all over the country. And I'm curious, have you heard from people who've seen it, who've maybe, have some personal experience with that? I mean, how do you think the film has been received thus far by audiences who see it?
I mean, everybody and their mama be like hitting me up and stuff, like they just keep blowing up my phone, like, bro, crazy. You was the bomb. No, actually, I've actually been lucky enough to sit in some of these screenings with people, and the best thing that I've heard coming out of these screenings is that some people say, look, I need to get active. How can I actually take some action? What can I do? Where can I go? How can I help? That to me is the highest compliment that we could possibly get from an experience with seeing this film, is that people actually want to take steps towards changing this situation. So that for me has been a beautiful experience. Generally I feel like people have really responded to it because it's less about the actual, it's not even about a crime at all. For the inmate, for who he affected, what he may have done. It's not about the crime that he committed. It's about the crime that we as society have a choice in committing. And a lot of people come out of that with a newfound perspective on what empathy is, what mercy truly is, how we can grow personally inside. And that's what I love to see. There's a transformative process that happens when I speak to people.
Is it important that work you do has a political dimension? I mean, I've spoken to some actors, writers, directors who feel, in this particularly charged time, that they feel a sort of call to politicize what they do. I mean, is that how you kind of look at projects through that angle?
Funny that you mentioned that because I'm running for president in
You heard it here first.
20. No, I'm kidding. I love my job. I don't want that job. I'm good. No, for me, it's important that there's always a level of quality that is maintained when it comes to the art. And with projects like this, what I call it effective art, because we have a responsibility to a particular subject matter where we can actually affect changing that subject matter. So we have to be very cautious about our tact and our execution of said art. But not every project I do is going to have a sort of a political notation to it. It's not always going to be as daunting of a topic. However, I want it to always be entertaining. I want it to be effective. I want it to be evocative. I want people to feel something. And whether they're laughing, crying, figuring things out, I just want people to feel something. And when I do get to be attached to projects like this that are, heavy on something that we may not think about in its truth. We think we know about it, but we see a completely different side of its truth. I feel like there's a great responsibility there that we bear, that we're taking on, and I feel like when we do it, we hopefully hit the nail on the head, where people can come out of this with a renewed sort of idea of what this is, a renewed sense of vigor when it comes to understanding their responsibility as they carry out in the world, their responsibility to themselves and to one another as individuals. So to me, as an artist, to get blessed with work like this is such a privilege, because gems like this don't cross your desk every single day.
Well, we're at SCAD, which is a school. So I would assume we have maybe some students in the audience. So, yeah.
Students, let me see a show of hands. Where the students at?
Oh, amazing. Yeah.
It's past all of y'all's curfews right now. All y'all's. You got school in the morning. Look at you. Just out here wilding. Call your mamas.
On a Monday night. Well, I'm curious then, from a technical, acting standpoint, I mean, maybe someone in the audience is watching that and it's like, what are the choices being made? Because it's such a quiet movie, and yet it has to communicate so much feeling. So what is that kind of approach to your craft when, obviously if you have a big monologue, you can just tear into that, but this kind of requires a lot more with less, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, that's tough, man. For me, some of the hardest acting that you can do is when you're not saying anything, because you have to project so much. You have to be the loudest when you are verbally the most quiet. And that means truly understanding the emotions of the character, understanding what moment that you're in and what you're trying to say. Because when it comes to my work, I feel like I'm having a conversation with my audience, so I need to be clear on what conversation I'm trying to have. And with Anthony, I felt like I was trying to get people to see a human being beyond his situation. So let's forget about the jail. Let's forget about the crime. Can you see a man, and can you see yourself in this man? So when he's sitting there and Bernadine is running down how they're going to take his life, what is that like? He's hearing this for the very first time. I don't know what that's like, but I wanted to experience it with him as I experienced it through him. So I just allowed myself to figure that out in the moment, in the scene. Just be available, be prepared, be ready to receive, and just receive what's there and react. I don't want to be over-rehearsed, ready to respond. I want to hear something, I want to feel something, and then I want to react to it. And he doesn't know what's happening in that moment. All he's trying to figure out is, what does life mean now that they are literally telling me, this is all the time I have, you're about to take my life. What does life mean? And that's what he's kind of going through. So it's also a tougher situation because you don't have a lot of words to focus on that. You know, people are focusing on everything else in the scene, the physical, the this, the that. So you have to be very present. Your presence has to be loud. You should be very assured of your character in that you are presenting a full story in these very subtle moments and leading people on a very consistent journey from point A to point B.
Yeah, and then I'm really glad you brought up the Danielle Brooks scene in particular, because that strikes me as one of the most powerful scenes I've seen this year. I mean, it's just so
Oh, well, thank you, man.
like
Wow.
real and goes in unexpected directions. You know, the sort of the dialogue. So I'm curious, like when you were prepping to shoot that scene that has to be so connected and yet through a pane of glass, like did you have conversations with Danielle and Shonee like about how that was going to play out? I'm just curious, like how you got ready for that.
No. Well, you just got me all up in my feelings, brother. I appreciate it. So as far as that conversation with Danielle, you talking about when we were on the phone, and Danielle and I we had met that day. We'd met each other prior, but as far as getting together, working on that scene, we met that day. We probably had a couple hours just to really get the flow of the lines right. But after we got that, we didn't over-rehearse. We kind of just dove into it and, wanted to feel each other out, because that's a scene where you really have to rely on your actor, your acting scene partner. Because when the camera's on her, I still got to be all in my feelings, crying and doing my thing. When the camera's on me, she still has to be giving me 100% fullness. And that's where you really do see a tag team partnership happen back and forth, because we're pushing each other to really be our best selves in the moment. And granted, we know what we feel for our characters, but we don't know what's about to happen. Even though we know what's on the page, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know when the tears are going to happen, if tears are going to happen. We don't know, putting a hand to the window. We don't know how that response is going to go. We don't know any of that. We don't want to know. We want to discover it through our characters. And that just means that she's really present, I'm really present. Our director is sitting there like Michelangelo, carving out our choices, and doing an excellent job of that. And that's where you have full team cohesion. Where you have a fully cohesive team that is on the same page, shooting for the same goal. And it just means great communication to get to that point. That's talking to your DP, that's talking to your director, that's, when you outside on a break talking to Crafty, saying, appreciate the little iced tea, thank you. But that is full team cohesion, making sure that everybody's shooting for the same target. And the thing is, everybody has to be hitting that at the same time. And we just got lucky, and we have a monster crew, and everybody was on.
With such a heavy subject matter and so many intense scenes, does the energy on set feel kind of like the opposite? Is it like they call cut and you can kind of just breathe, or did you have to dwell in that intensity throughout the shoot?
So it was a little intense for a few people. So during the opening scene, the botched execution, which was actually inspired by a real botched execution. A few people who had been shooting had trouble dealing with things emotionally, so they brought in a specialist, a psychiatrist on set to help talk to people, help them through. People really felt this. They were really truly emotional about it, and that's a part of it that, even though it is intense, I agree. I love, because I feel like these people are hearts full when they come to the set and they put it all through. As far as myself, I'm a strange cat, because no, it's okay. You can laugh at that. It's cool. I'm strange. What's weird for me is that the harder it gets for my character, the more excited I get, because, again, I'm having a conversation with the audience. And when he's having those moments, like he's about to bang his head on the wall and take his own life, and I'm like, yes, I want to get as raw as we can. Let's get real. Let's go harder. Let's go more intense because I want the audience to see his reality. I want them to see his truth and how harsh it actually is. So I get excited for how people are going to respond to it. And for me, I just get more passionate because, again, the responsibility ticks up. And every job for me is an opportunity and a chance to increase and grow in my craft, and that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that all that hard work really shows in the film. And I mean, I'm curious, like when you saw it for the first time, was it as you had imagined? I mean, because obviously there's a lot of stuff with Alfred that you weren't present for the shooting of. I mean, what was your takeaway when you first saw it?
So I made the mistake of watching it for the first time with my mama. Yeah. It went exactly like you think. The second time I saw it, again, was with my mama. But add to that, I had my sister. She's 10 years younger than me, looks up to me. I love her to death. She's my mini-me. I've never seen so many tears in my life. Me personally, I felt so much when I saw it the first time. I was really happy with it. I loved what it turned out to be. Everyone's performance was excellent. I did not get a chance to personally work with Wendell. But then when I see this man who's struggling to hold together his marriage, he's trying to stitch it together piece by piece. I'm like, brother, you go ahead, Wendell. You gonna get that, Wendell. You know what I'm saying? Because that brother's sharp. He's personally for me, he's a legend in his own right. But it's stitched together so well, and I got to see the use of color. I got to see the use of light. Much credit to our DP, Eric Bronco. For me, it was a wonderful experience to see something happen in such a sort of art noir way. I call it a beautifully haunting masterpiece, because that's what I feel like it is. But once I got past that, I had to get back to consoling my mother. She was a hot mess. I'll never let her see this movie again. Love your mama, but nah, you can't. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Well, we thank you for your work in the film and for sitting here and talking with me today. And thank you all for coming. And please tell people to see this film. It's a hard sit, but it's a worthy sit. Again, thank you all. Yeah.
I appreciate you all. Thank you, and I appreciate your time. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.